So today is January 16th, 2025. This is the first live stream of 2025. Awesome, right? Fun. So 2025. How has it been so far for you? Have you enjoyed 2025 so far? I would say, personally, 2025 has been pretty well. 2025 has been, well, 2025 has been a interesting year so far. Here's a fun fact about 2025. So we are 1/4. Here, I have a quarter right here. We are one of these of the way done with the years of the 2000. So 2000 and we're this far into it. We're 1/4. We're 1/4 of the way through the 21st century. Well, that means that 2050 is 25 years from now, right? Yes. Yes, just wanted to make sure. Yes. So, 25 years from now will be 2050. 2050. Isn't that crazy? You know, when I was growing up in the early 2000s, it was always thought that the 80s were really long ago, you know? Close enough in memory, but not in recent memory. Like we were kids growing up in the early 2000s, and, well, we always looked at the 80s as how kids today can and probably will look at our era that we were born into. It's interesting. You know, the passage of time is really interesting. And seeing that we're 1/4 of the century already completed, it makes you wonder, what do the next 25 years look like? What do the next 4 years look like? I mean, the last 5 years. So, 2020 till now. The last 5 years, we've been through a lot this decade. The 2020s have been an interesting decade. The 20 teens, though, were interesting. As I grew up during the 20 teens and late to mid 2000s, the world was different. And it was really a lot different. But the 5 years since 2020 there's a lot that we've been through, you know? Around this time, 5 years ago, we were excited what this new year would look like, how things were going, and we heard that this virus, this plague, was harboring itself in China. That's what we were told, at least. And then this plague called COVID-19 affected us for so long, so very long. But the pandemic ended in 2023. So 3 years of pandemic. So five years into the 2020s. We are in the middle of the 2020s, if you really think about it like that. We are in the middle of the 2020s. We're already in the middle of the 2020s. The middle of the 20-teens was 2015. And if you were around during 2015, 10 years ago, it was a different world. And what will the next 5 years, what will the world look like by 2030? Yeah. What will the world look like in 5 years? Oh no. But the next 5 years, I was told this as a freshman in 2018. What do you expect yourself to be in 5 years? At that time, as a young freshman in high school, I wasn't really sure how the future was going to be, but it made me think. So, what do you think the next 5 years are going to be for you? What do you want to achieve? What is in store for 2025 will be through? What will happen in the next 5 years? Who knows? I mean, it was only 5 years ago that COVID shut down the world, shut down the entire world. That day, a world that my generation specifically believed we would inherit died. And the new generation, Alpha, and the new generation, the newest generation, Generation Beta, that is being born from here till 32-ish, 2032-ish, or 39. I'd have to check the years. They're interesting. But Alpha, Generation Alpha, now has a generation after them. And this generation after them is called Beta. And anyone born in this year, 2025, is a Beta. Part of the Beta generation. Now, Generation Z, as I've heard, or Generation Z, was a generation that faced a lot of things. A lot of things. Many of us, on the latter end, or in the middle of Generation Z, got to experience a world that's unrecognizable today. Unrecognizable. I mean, when I was growing up, the fast food places, even in the last 10 years, the fast food restaurants and all these things have changed. Instead of the architecture, we had this kid-friendly architecture, these bright colors, these really funny burger chairs they had at McDonald's, um, and countless other things. They just, during the 20 teens, it just stopped. And then 2020 and the 2020s just cut the whole world out. And so in 2020, that world that I grew up in no longer exists. And I do hope that Alpha and Beta get to experience the world. Obviously, we can't go back in time. It'd be nice to. Back to a time that we remember, but there's no way. So we must move on, move forward. But if I could say anything about the past, I must also say something about the future. So the past, the world that I grew up in was kid friendly. We had music, and we looked down on Alpha. Some of Generation Z and others generations look down on Alpha, as other generations look down at Generation Z because we're quote unquote lazy. But that's debatable. But Generation Alpha has this thing called brain rot, and it's rotting their brains. It's rotting our brains. It's quick dopamines, quick hits of a chemical in our brain. And our brains are wired. Our brains are wonderfully made. Like, wonderfully made. And they're interconnected, you know? And so the effect that this brain rot that I've heard about and that is taking really much control over Generation Alpha, as I've heard, from whom I've heard it. But I've looked back at the media that I grew up with, and let me tell you, it was cool because when we were kids, we enjoyed it because we were kids, you know? I think Generation Alpha has the same idea with this brain rot kind of thing, this quick entertainment. And it's teaching the brain something. Not healthy, but I would say that in the past, we had some troubling things too. MLG, if anyone was around for the MLG thing, I didn't even understand what it was. To be honest, I still don't. But it was this thing during the general area of the early 20 teens, before TikTok, so 2017, before 2017. 2017 is when TikTok came around, and TikTok, I had a TikTok. I checked it out, and it was a different TikTok than the TikTok of today, and that was 8 years ago. About 8 years ago, TikTok and Fortnite hit the scene and hit the world, and that world was a different world. and the MLG and all these memes and stuff. Each generation learns from the previous generation. My generation learned from the generation before it. And that generation that was before my generation, Generation Z, learned from one generation to another generation to another generation. We learn from each other. And Gen Alpha is looking up to us, if you think about it. Because we've been through it. So they look up to us. And let me tell you something really fun that I've seen is there's a renaissance of sorts happening on YouTube. And it is amazing. The Generation Alpha are making interesting content. Listen, not all content you're not going to like, you know. Some people like Pepsi and some people like Coke, you see. We have a difference of preference, but it's still art. Now, the rise of AI is interesting because back in my day, we didn't have images that could be artificially generated, and AI art has made a advance on the world of art and music too. Also, AI music, voiceovers. Some of this AI stuff has been well and used well so that people who want to know things in a language that hasn't been, like, to be honest, I've seen AI a lot as translating things from certain time period to another time period. But the problem with AI is this. It's getting too real. It's getting too real. AI is getting to a point where you don't know if a picture is AI generated or not. I can still tell sometimes, but AI is getting scary, to be honest. Especially as an artist myself, an animator, it is kind of scary. AI is, because it's really the people's choice whether AI is considered art, or that art, as it has been used for many, many years, and many years beyond that, as art that was made by people, and not by some artificial code that draws whatever you put in a prompt. But minus AI and the concerns with it, the 2020s has been a lot of things. Easy is not one of them, I would say, for most, if not everyone, because the 2020s started with COVID, and then we had, during COVID, the first year of COVID, we had a presidential election, and that was 4 years ago, when Joe Biden, the current president as of this moment, January 16th, 2025, this coming Monday, it's Thursday now, this coming Monday, January 20th? Yeah, January 20th is inauguration day of the president-elect Donald Trump, who was president 4 years ago. So, a lot is happening in 2025, you know? To be honest, 2025 is interesting. And everyone could talk about all the bad stuff, but let's talk about some good stuff. Good things about 2025. Well, YouTube, as I was trying to say beforehand, before um, Generation Alpha is making amazing content. I've looked at some of these up and coming animators and stuff, storytime animators. Let me tell you, there's a renaissance happening on YouTube. As much as YouTube has had a lot of things happen to it in the last, well, throughout YouTube's history, but specifically the last 10 years, how YouTube has changed. YouTube, to have a renaissance is a great sign that alpha, this, these kids, Generation Alpha, are making stuff they like. They're experimenting like we experimented. That experiment that YouTube is. There's a, there's just there's a spark. There's a spark. I can see it. But at the same time, YouTube is more restrictive than it was in my day, or in the early days, in the Wild West, as some would say, of YouTube. But I would say that we have better days to come, hopefully, for YouTube, and just for the world in general. But this year, in closing, this year, think about this. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you think you're going to be in 5 years? And will you look back at this moment right now and regret it? Regret that you didn't take that opportunity, or that you didn't take that gamble, that chance, you know? Take chances. You're going to make mistakes. But listen. We all make mistakes. What is important is, one, who we turn to, and who stands up after. Because you can take hit after hit after hit, and if you're still standing, you haven't been beaten. Sure, you've fallen. Sure, you've fallen into the ditch. But a righteous man falleth 7 times and cometh up again. So, through the troubles of life, just remember to keep moving forward and have faith. And remember that future you will look at this moment either with joy that you did what you did, regret that you didn't do it, that you didn't chase those dreams that are your dreams. Chase your dreams. Just do it. Listen, the best dreams and the best rewards don't come easily. They are fought. Meaning, you're going to be thrown down. And if you are with someone and you have a helper, a friend, if one of you fall, the person that isn't fallen can raise up his brother, or sister. You can raise them up. So remember, be kind. Remember to be kind this year. And, well, I hope that this year, and whatever the next year holds, or whatever the next 10 years holds, we will go through it. But don't stop. Remember this. Jesus said, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. Lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the world. So remember, trust Him and move forward. You may fall, and you're bound to fall. It's natural. You'll fall. But don't give up. Keep pushing forward. Run the race that is to be run. Well, you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful 2025.